Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for logging on and checking out my Northwest Territory PowerPoint. This is actually called a flipped classroom PowerPoint. The reasoning behind this is that you flip the actual presentation. Instead of me sitting in class and giving you the PowerPoint, and I'm not saying it'll waste time, but taking up time where I could use it's more valuable, and you could use as well. Figured that it'd be better if you do it at home. You can check out the PowerPoint. You can listen to everything that I'm saying. You can write down notes. You can take down and write down any questions that you may have and bring it in for tomorrow. What I plan on doing the rest of this week is having you work on a Northwest Territory project. So I figured that if you guys viewed this PowerPoint outside of the classroom, at home, or in the library, you would be able to then spend more time in class working on the project, and I'd be able to spend more time helping you develop your project. So this is something that I'm going to ask you to take notes down. I'm also going to ask you to write down any questions you may have as well. If you guys remember last Friday, we talked about the Treaty of Paris. The Treaty of Paris of 1783, which ended the Revolutionary War. What I'm going to highlight right now is the area we all know, 13 colonies that started off under the king, under Parliament, and the rule. In 1776, the colonists decided they were going to declare their independence from England, and they were going to break away. Well, we all know that they can't just break away. They had to prove this. They had to win the Revolutionary War to prove their independence. In 1783, this actually did happen, and the colonists became U.S. citizens for the first time. They won their independence in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris. Not only did they gain this area that I have just highlighted, the 13 colonies, they also gained the area known as the Treaty of Paris as well. The northern boundary would be Canada. The western boundary would be the Mississippi River. The southern boundary would be Florida. And the eastern boundary would be the Atlantic Ocean. So all of this land, 13 colonies including, becomes the United States of America. This is the beginning of the United States of America. In the beginning, there were only 13 states. Everything from the Appalachian Mountains to the east side, where the Atlantic Ocean is. Everything over here would be the 13 states. The problem with the Articles of Confederation, the government that decided they wanted to put in place to rule and help develop the land and the country, they actually had to have every single state agree and sign to make it in effect and to govern the country. Some states actually started to grab land from the Treaty of Paris in this area as well. Massachusetts, as you can see, started to grab some of Wisconsin and Michigan. You also see that North Carolina started to grab some land as Tennessee today. Georgia started to grab some Alabama and Mississippi land. All of this land over here was started to be grabbed by all the other states. But there were some states that were left out of this. New Jersey, for instance, they did not grab any of this land. Rhode Island did not either. So these states were very unhappy that they did not have the opportunity to grab the land. So therefore, they equated land with power back then. The more land you had, the more power you would have, more resources, more people. Thing was, remember, once again, you had to have every single state sign the Articles of Confederation into effect. So those smaller states, ones that did not grab any land, they said they will not sign the Articles of Confederation into effect until all of the other states gave up their western land claim out here. All of this land. They said they would not sign it into effect unless they gave up all of this land, every single piece of it. I actually refer to them as like brothers, fighting over land, fighting over a toy, fighting over who has the most power, who has the most dominance. And I'm sorry, ladies, as well. It's almost like sisters fighting as well. After the war, so the states then became a land scramble. They tried to grab as much as they can, leaving some states out. Finally, though, some of the states decided, mainly the bigger ones, they were going to give up their claims, and they were going to put their country above their own interests and their own state interests, because they really felt they needed to be united in this fight against Britain and to keep their independence. So they decided they were going to give up their land claim, and they were going to put the country ahead of everything else. moving along. As you can see, as I said, the Appalachian Mountains, the 13 states, and then you have the land claim. Everyone gave up all of their land claim over here west of the Appalachian Mountains. The Land Ordinance of 1785 now is actually a way that the Articles of Confederation used and decided they were going to develop this new land west of the Appalachian Mountains. They were going to use this land over here as a way to develop. The government decided they were going to do two things. It was actually a pretty smart move and a very good job of the Articles of Confederation. Later on in the week, we're going to talk about some of the problems and the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, because as you can tell, the Articles of Confederation is not around now, so you can tell it failed. But one good thing they did was they decided and made the future template for how you are going to develop new land for the rest of the country. The brilliant thing they did is they decided they were going to do two things. One, they were going to sell the land to the investors and the people. So one, they were going to make a profit off of that land, and two, the investors and the people were the ones that were going to spend their time and money developing the land. So the government, the Articles of Confederation, actually made out pretty well. The surveys and the people would divide the land into something called townships. East Callan Township, which Downingtown is a part of, is an example of a township. It is actually a 6 mile by 6 mile grid of squares that are kind of almost evenly distributed. Each square within that 6 mile by 6 mile radius would be 1 mile by 1 mile. And I'm going to bring up actually something you're going to use for your project, this template right here. I'm going to give you this tomorrow, and I'm going to have you guys develop your own township. And as I said, it is a 6 mile, if you look up here to the top, this 6 miles by 6 mile area known as a township. Each one of these boxes is actually 1 mile by 1 mile. So box number 22, for instance, is 1 mile by 1 mile. And if you add all these up together, you'll have 36 boxes or 36 square miles in a township. Each one of these has different things in it. It'll have some homes, some farms. Block 21 could have an area where sheep and animals graze. Box number 29 could have an area where a market is, where people can sell food and congregate. So this area is known as a township, and I'm going to have you guys develop your own township as well. So keep in mind, if you have any questions about this, write this down. So on top of that, as I said, 36 miles. Each mile would actually be sold for $1. So the government would sell this plot of land, so 36 by 36, so you'd have $36 for a township. That's actually not bad at all back then, but the land was in abundance. You could sell as much land as you possibly could. So therefore, they sold it for cheap. Now $1 is not that cheap back then, but it's still, if you had a good amount of money, you can buy a lot of land back then for $1. On top of that, the money would be used to pay off the national debt. This is where I think that the idea of selling the land was brilliant on the part of the Articles of Confederation, because they didn't have to spend any money developing it. They also could use that money to pay back the national debt from the Revolutionary War. One thing though, I know you're all going to love this, each township had to have a school in the center. So in that 36 square mile, there had to be in the center point a school. Why a school? The new government actually decided to place a lot of effort and a lot of attention into developing a school and education. They figured that the best way to get the people involved in the government is to educate them. Educate them so they can have an effective voice and they can have a say in the new government and in the new direction of the new government as well. So schools actually became very important at this time. But still, everyone was not able to go. A lot of people still had to work on the farms and they did not have the time to go to school because they had to make money for their parents.